You're listening to the Successors podcast with Kara Oosterhuis on RealAgriculture.com. Welcome, everyone. It's been a while. I'll tell you, with conferences and trade shows back in full swing, it is a busy time here at Real Agriculture. But hey, we're excited to do it and continue to bring you content from across North America. I am your host, Kara Oosterhuis, and this is the Successors podcast. And speaking of bringing content back, I've got another episode for you guys. I know it's been a few months. This one is a bit different. As you know, I've had guests on here from central Alberta to southern Ontario to Wichita, Kansas. Today's episode is coming to you from my kitchen table here in Bow Island, Alberta. I love the ability to catch up with producers near and far, but man, oh man, is it always great to chat face to face. Without further ado, I've got here Nick Lamberts of Burdett, Alberta. Nick, how's it going today?
I'm doing good.
Okay, so you guys grow potatoes on your farm, but specifically little potatoes. Do you want to tell me, give me some insight there?
So my family and I, we grow approximately 650 acres of little potatoes for the Little Potato Company. And, well, they're based out of Edmonton. And they're focused on creamer potatoes, which is really any potato that's smaller than 42 millimeters in size, which pretty small.
So alongside the potatoes, what else do you guys grow?
We grow a little bit of hard red spring wheat, commercial canola, depending on the year if it fits or not. We've done a little bit of mustard, and yeah, we'll try and fit in a pulse if it works, like a pea or whatever, sometimes a dry bean if we have to swap some land.
So do you base all of your rotations around what is best for the potatoes?
We, for certain varieties of potatoes that we grow, we like to follow commercial canola because it kind of has like a fumigant effect. We think. We haven't really proven it, but we've seen good results following commercial canola. Seed canola as well, but you run into some issues with the meal bays, with different nutrient levels and chemical residue. This year we tried some mustard, or I guess 2022 we tried some mustard, and we're going to follow potatoes in 2023 and see how that looks.
Now, you and I live in windy country. As we know, sometimes that wind just howls and blows. And how does your rotation play into soil erosion and that sort of thing?
Yeah, so the last few years have been challenging, as you might know. And we've tried a lot with different cover crops. This past fall was a really good fall for cover crops. Almost everything took off well. On sandy fields, we definitely try and follow with a winter wheat, try to get the crop off early, and we try to plan for that. And then, even midway through the season, you might, if you have a field that's, kind of like medium texture, like... It's sandy, but not super sandy. It's got a little bit more clay, try and get a cover crop down to get something established. And then, we have some heavier ground as well that typically doesn't seem to get too affected by the wind.
And what kind of soil do the potatoes like the best? Do they work well in the sandy soil?
We found for our red potatoes, they like to see a little bit more clay content or clay matter you get a nicer, nicer skin finish, like a redder skin finish, where we have other varieties that really like the sand. Like we have a purple variety that loves the sand and a yellow variety that loves the sand as well.
So now you mentioned Little Potato Company. Obviously, you grow the small potatoes. Now they're like a quarter of the size probably of a regular potato, correct?
Yeah, if not less. Yeah, a regular potato, like I assume you mean like a russet Burbank, like a French fry or baking potato.
A typical potato, yeah.
I would say about a quarter or so, or maybe a little bit smaller.
And now, do most of them get marketed to the grocery market, or they get marketed elsewhere?
So I believe everything that the Little Potato Company produces is in like from a 1.5 pound bag to I think even up to a 5 pound bag that you can find in the grocery store. But they also have like a really cool microwave tray and an oven tray, so you can pick these up and, if you throw them in the microwave and they're done in 5 minutes, and then the oven, I think it's like 20 minutes, or I think they even go on the barbecue as well. So
Can confirm they're easy peasy and delicious.
yeah, good to hear.
So, I mean, potatoes are specialized, and obviously, I mean, you and I are talking without even mentioning this because it's so common for us, but they're all grown on irrigation as well, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. I think in the part of the world where we live in, like southern Alberta, it's so dry that you can't count on Mother Nature. You need to have irrigation and get some water down.
Do you know on average how much water you'd put down in a year on potatoes?
On the little ones, I think we use anywhere, depending on the year, 6 to 10 inches on average. I think, yeah, if it's a really, really dry year and you have a long season variety, you'll get to the top end, but some of the short-term varieties, 6 to 10 inches.
So you mentioned short-term and long-term varieties there. What do you mean? Like, what does that look like for short-term and long-term?
So we have some varieties that are very, very early, like to top kill, particularly like reds and purples, and then they're about a 65-day potato from planting to top kill, and then after top kill, we usually leave the potatoes in the ground for about a month to a month and a half for skin set. So what skin set means is the time from when they're like fully dead, like, you know, all nutrients are cut off, all water is cut off. The potatoes are just sitting there in the hill. They're after it's think of it as suberizing. They're almost kind of like suberizing and growing a skin. So they're dead, but the skin is still like the potato itself is like, okay, I have to protect myself against Mother Nature, and it's going into survival mode. So by doing that, it's trying to grow a shell around itself, which is what we call skin set. So it's growing a thicker skin, and what that skin does is it helps the potato at harvest time, protects against mechanical damage, bruising, anything that may try and affect the quality of the potato, versus where if you just, you know, you top kill them and you go in a week later and like, okay, I'm gonna dig these things, put them in the bin. Well, by doing that, you're gonna cut the skin. You skin the skin is what they call it, if you believe it or not, which means that the skin just peels off. So by taking the time and letting that skin heal in the ground, you preserve the quality of the potato throughout the storing season. So for us, it's like we have a growing season, and then we have a storing season, which is almost as important as the growing season, because if you can't store a potato, there's no point in growing a potato.
I can tell you that from experience. I know this is on a much smaller scale, but growing potatoes in my garden, we don't really have much of a cold storage. I grew a bunch, put them all in my basement, and they had shoots coming out of them within a month, and they were all. I was like, wow, I'm so glad I spent all that time growing the potatoes. So yeah. I give what you're saying.
Well, if you keep them in a cool, dark place, you're usually well off. But
so let's talk storage then. What kind of storage facility do you use? How does that work? Like, it's temperature regulated, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. So we try, when we harvest, we bring them in usually. I'd say on average 16 degrees Celsius or less, and then, well, above zero, obviously. Yeah, you don't want to really dig. You kind of want to dig between, I'd say, anywhere 7 to 16, 17 degrees. And then not really much warmer than that, not much cooler than that. So that's kind of your window. You get them in the bin, and then you kind of gradually cool them down. I'd say half a degree a day or so to be safe, maybe up to a degree if you get in a pinch is safe. You don't really want to really ramp the temperature down, because then the potatoes, they kind of go into a little bit of a stress mode, and then they start releasing moisture, and then you get what's called sweating, and then you're losing moisture into the air. And a potato, majority of its mass is actually water. So I don't know if it's the right term, but you're gassing off water or letting off water, which then goes into the air, and then you lose a bunch of mass. So you kind of want to maintain a good system to gradually bring down the temperature. And while you do that, you want to stay on top of your relative humidity. So we like to keep a relative humidity of between about a 90 and 97% humidity in our storage bins.
How do you keep that humidity?
At the end of the storage bin, there's usually a fan that'll blow the air through the pile. And then in our bulk piles, we have underground ventilation. So it's pipes that run underneath the floor, and then there's little outlets that go up every foot or so, let's say a foot to 15 inches across the bin. And through that ducting, or that aeration system, you blow air through the pile. And then right in front of the fan, there's what they call a humidicell. It's like a big cardboard looking box thing almost, but water runs down through it. And then as the fan is pushing air through the pile, it picks up moisture from this cardboard looking humidicell thing, and it pushes it through the pile. And that helps to maintain the relative humidity in the building and keeps your potatoes from letting off moisture. Or sweating off moisture, I guess, essentially.
So storage facilities are a huge part of growing potatoes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, let's talk equipment now. It's not just a matter of, like you said, having the right storage facility, but you got to get the potatoes in the ground. How do you actually start seeding? What do you use to seed your potatoes?
When we plant, we start the little potatoes. We start planting them around May 5 to May 10th is kind of like a good time to start planting your longer season varieties if the soil temperatures are there, right? So you kind of want to be around a 10-degree soil temperature to start your season. And then, we run 2 6-row planters, and we're on a 30-inch row spacing because we grow small potatoes. So traditionally in North America, I think 36 inches is the standard, if I'm not wrong. And for our potatoes, it does not really make much sense, or for our operation, that does not make much sense, I should say, because little potatoes is our main focus. So by going at 30-inch row spacing, we can maybe push our in-row spacing a little bit farther versus on the 36-inch rows. And I think we can even up our plant population per acre a little bit to try and gain a higher yield. I think we do gain a higher yield than on 36 inches. So we're making, I believe we're making a lot more, or we're taking a lot more use out of the land versus if we were to grow a small potato on 36-inch rows. But with 30-inch rows comes a lot of different challenges, because 30-inch is a common practice in lots of parts of Europe versus North America. It's not so common. So it makes it very attractive to start looking into European equipment. And in Europe, they've grown potatoes for many, many years. They have a lot of experience with handling potatoes, and I'd say even growing similar sized potatoes to what we do. So it makes it attractive to start looking at equipment there and finding a fit there.
When you're talking about desiccating, you go across, you spray out these potatoes before they sit in the ground for the month or month and a half or whatever it is. How do you deal with the tops? Do you have a topper after that, or what do you do there?
Yeah, so our harvesters there, we have a 4-row self-propelled harvester, and on the front of it, it has kind of like a, think of it almost like, if I don't know if this might only be familiar to certain people in the area, but that, like, you know how beets have a topper, you top the tops off the beets. We have something similar to that on the front of the potato harvester to top off the dead vines, and it kind of like sucks them off and throws them off to the side.
Do they get worked back in, or do they provide any nutrients back to the soil?
I don't think there's a whole bunch left. Some varieties leave more behind than others, like more trash behind than others, I should say. And I guess it kind of gets incorporated when you see the cover crop, but yeah, there's not a whole bunch of value left to those tops.
Now, as you said, soil temperature is super important when it comes to planting. What about digging? Are you looking for certain soil temperatures there, or air temperatures?
Yeah, absolutely. So just like storing, you have to really, when we start harvesting, especially in the back half of August, sometimes we'll start very early in the morning to try and capitalize on the cooler temperatures. And you really want to be under 18, 19 degrees when you're going into the storage. And then, as the fall gets cooler, you usually get safer and safer. But yeah, we really have to manage and watch that we don't push the temperatures too much. That can affect the storability of the potatoes. You might, if you push it too much, you can have a chance of spoilage in the bin.
Now, new technology. I know I'm not really super familiar with the world of potatoes, but I mean, I know there's technology coming out everywhere. Is that the same in the potato world?
Yeah, I think so. There's always different companies and different people are trying new ideas. One of the really cool things I think that's up and coming is like artificial sorting, like artificial intelligence. Like you see a lot of camera scanning and like you see a lot of grading through artificial intelligence, I guess.
Could you see something like is that when I look at tractors and I look at autonomy, 5 years ago I was like, there's no way these tractors are going to drive themselves. And man, I go to show after show and it seems like it is becoming more and more something that could actually happen. Is that something you see with the AI sorting and things like that? Is that something that could be adapted on your farm?
From a shipping standpoint, I think, instead of having 2 full-time guys there making things work with, for example, 6th graders on the shipping outside, I think it might be, one guy. You might be working a little bit slower and more hours, but it'd be 2 guys taking turns versus 2 guys at the same time, and making a little bit longer hours, but getting more done with less people essentially.
How do you keep yourself up? I mean, there's so many things continuously changing. How do you keep yourself educated on what's going on?
There's a lot on social media, I think, that I follow. I go to a fair amount of trade shows. I go overseas once in a while, partly because I have family there. But then when you're there, you get to you kind of plan a trip around when these trade shows are, and you get to go and see what's over there, as well as the Potato Growers of Alberta. They put on a conference every year. So yeah, go there, meet up with people, connect, and see what's new.
Speaking of having family over there, your family actually immigrated here from the Netherlands. Did you guys grow potatoes over there? Was that a completely new endeavor once you got here?
Yeah, my dad, he had a small mixed farm with my grandfather. At the time, he also worked I guess he worked at another farm. And then I think, if I remember correctly, he was at the point where it was like, okay, I'm working a lot, but I'm spending more time on somebody else's farm than on my own farm, maybe, where I'd like to be more on my own farm. So then he explored his options and found southern Alberta, I guess. And then, decided that my mom and dad together decided that would maybe be a good move for the future.
How many are involved in the business?
So it's me, my dad, my mom, and then I have a younger brother. Yeah, we all kind of work together to make the business run.
Have you started any succession planning, anything like that? Or so far dad's the boss and you're still working that way?
I think we all have a pretty good vision of where we want to be in the future. My brother and I, we kind of know where we want to be going forward. And then, mom and dad are up there. How do I word it? They're slowing down, but I think they also still want to be heavily involved because the farm kind of grew so fast. Like we started in 2014 with the potatoes that, by no means are they at a point where they need to jump out of it, but they do realize that, there has to be a future for my brother and I think that.
Now, we don't have to get into dynamics too much, but I always like to ask, how does that work when you're working together all the time, you're doing business together, and you also are sitting together at the dinner table? How do you kind of separate family and business?
Yeah, that's a tough one because, in the busy season, obviously you're together a lot. Yeah, in the slower month, obviously it's not like we don't talk. Definitely, we talk a lot, but we also respect each other's time away doing our own thing, I guess, is the best way to word it.
I mean, I have to ask, favorite part of the farm? There's obviously things that you're going to say you probably don't love doing, but really, in this industry, we do this because we love it. What's your favorite part?
Honestly, I like the whole process from, when you put a crop into the ground and then you get to grow it, and then it's really rewarding to ship it. You ship the crop and then you see like, especially on the potato side, you ship it and then you see how it packs out and what the quality is, what the defects are, and then you try and you analyze, okay, well, what's wrong? How can I adjust? What can I do better next season?
So I know in the grain world, we can harvest our crop, look at the sample and go, oh yeah, that's a number one. You bring it into the elevator and they say, I think that's a number two you got there. Is there a lot of discrepancies there when it comes to potato grading, or not so much?
Yeah, to an extent, I think a lot of it depends on the growing conditions and the fall that we have. It really depends on your field as well, if there's soil-borne diseases or not. But I think on average, if you can get a good crop in the bin without too much soil-borne diseases, and it's pretty manageable from there. Yeah, if you manage it well, usually the returns are
Now,
fairly good.
what is the biggest problem when it comes to soil-borne diseases? What disease hurts you the most?
There's a disease. It's called scab, which can be devastating. It has a lot to do with the amount of residue that's in the soil, I believe. So that's going back to our crop rotation, which canola is a really nice one to follow because there's less trash to deal with than a durum or a spring wheat crop, for example. There's also certain varieties that handle these conditions better, and some are more susceptible than others, I guess it would be the best way to explain it.
So is there control methods for scab, or is it one of those that once it's in there you can't really get it out?
Once it's in there, there's not much you can really do. It's on the surface of the potato, and it's a defect, I guess is the best way to.
So another part of being a part of a business and helping manage it is keeping yourself organized. I mean, you have paperwork all year round. How do you manage your paperwork? And do you keep it at the shop? Do you do it from your home office? Or how do you sort of do that?
I do a lot of the crop planning, I guess. And then I do that from home. I try to stay organized. I try to have a solid preseason plan of what's happening that year. But obviously things change throughout the year, as you might know. You might have some small little adjustments here and there, but I believe if you have a solid plan to start with and you have to make minimal changes, it's usually fairly manageable. And then, I try to adapt and stay on top of it as I go.
So when do you try and have your crop plan finished for the following year?
I try to get as close as I can in the fall, as tricky as that is, and then, update it as I go. And then I think, right now, I think it's end of January, beginning of February. I think it's time for it to be kind of pretty much concrete, I guess.
Absolutely. Talk about your post-secondary schooling. You didn't just go from high school to the farm. You left the farm and did some work. Talk about some of your experiences there.
So after I graduated high school, I took the plant and soil sciences at Lethbridge College for 2 years. And I kind of took that and ran with it, graduated from there. And then the spring that I graduated was actually the year that we got the deal with the little potato company to grow our first crop of potatoes. So I wouldn't say I never got the chance to go back to school. I never really felt comfortable enough to go and leave the farm and go back to school, which I think I'm allowed to be pretty thankful for, that I got that feeling that I shouldn't leave. I mean, maybe that's wrong of me to say, because if you have young listeners, I think education is very important, and try and get as much of it as I can, or as much of it as you can, I should say. But I felt like I was at a point where we had something that we could run with.
If you could talk to either your college self or somebody that's maybe in one of those programs right now in college, any pieces of advice before going back to the farm? Anything you kind of wish you knew?
I would say if you're going into something new or trying to venture out, I would say know what your costs are and know what your potential returns are. I would say know what the situation would be if you got 60% or 70% of what you're expecting, because chances are that might happen your first year or your second year. And it's going to take some time to build up, to build your dream, I guess. I think that being said, don't give up. Keep working hard and do the best that you can.
Well, on that note, Nick, I don't know if we can top off an ending any better than that. Thank you very much for your time, Nick.
Yeah, you're very welcome. Thanks for having me.
And thanks, of course, to all of you who tuned into episode 12 of the Successors podcast. You know, I'm really hoping to bring you a lot more of this podcast throughout the year, so stay tuned. As well, if you have anyone you think would make a great guest, there are so many brilliant minds out there across North America. Heck, I mean, across the globe. You have somebody international, besides the United States international, somebody across seas you would love to recommend, send them my way. I would love to expand who we have on here. So you can get in touch with me through Twitter at Kara Oosterhuis or send me an email, KOOSTERHUIS at RealAgriculture.com. Until next time, stay real, and thanks for listening to The Successors.